Babbalanja steps in between Mohi and Yumi relates a legend. Embarking from Ohunu, we at length found ourselves gliding by the pleasant shores of Tupia, an islet which, according to Braidbeard, had for ages remained uninhabited by man. Much curiosity being expressed to know more of the isle, Mohi was about to turn over his chronicles, when, with modesty, the minstrel Yumi interposed, saying that if my lord Medea permitted, he himself would relate the legend. From its nature, deeming the same pertaining to his province as poet, though as yet it had not been versified. But he added that true pearl shells ran musically, though not strung upon a cord. Upon this presumptuous interference, Mohi looked highly offended, and nervously twitching his beard, uttered something invidious about frippery young poetasters being too full of silly imaginings to tell a plain tale. Said Yumi in reply, adjusting his turban, "Old Mohi, let us not clash. I honor your calling, but with submission. Your chronicles are more wild than my cantos. I deal in pure conceits of my own, which have a shapelessness and a unity, however unsubstantial, but you, Braidbeard, deal in mangled realities. In all your chapters you yourself grope in the dark. Much truth is not in thee, historian. Besides, Mohi, my songs perpetuate many things which you sage scribes entirely overlook. Have you not oftentimes come to me and my ever-dewy ballads for information in which you and your musty old chronicles were deficient? In much that is precious, Mohi, we poets are the true historians. We embalm, you corrode." To this Mohi, with some ire, was about to make an answer, when, flinging over his shoulder a new fold of his mantle, Babbalanja spoke thus: "Peace, rivals! As Bardianna has it, like all who dispute upon pretensions of their own, you are each nearest the right when you speak of the other, and furthest therefrom when you speak of yourselves." Said Mohi and Yumi in a breath, "Who sought your opinion, philosopher? You filcher from old Bardianna, and monger of maxims? You who have so long marked the vices of Mardi, that you flatter yourselves you have none of your own," added Braidbeard. "You who only seem wise because of the contrasting follies of others, and not of any great wisdom in yourself," continued the minstrel with unwonted asperity. "Now here," said Babbalanja, "am I charged upon a bearded old ram and a lamb, one butting with his curious and brittle old frontlet, the other pushing with his silly head before its horns are sprouted. But this comes of being impartial. Had I espoused the cause of Yumi versus Mohi, or that of Mohi versus Yumi, I had been sure to have had at least one voice in my favor. The impartialist insulteth all sides, saith old Bardianna. But smite with but one hand, and the other shall be kissed. O incomparable Bardianna!" "Will no one lay that troubled old ghost?" exclaimed Medea devoutly. "Proceed with thy legend, Yumi, and see to it that it be brief, for I mistrust me, these legends do but test the patience of the hearers. But draw a long breath, and begin." "A long bow," muttered Mohi. And Yumi began. "It is now about 10,000,000 moons." "Great Oro, how long since, you say?" cried Mohi, making Gothic arches of his brows. Looking at him disdainfully, but vouchsafing no reply, Yumi began over again. "It is now above 10,000,000 moons, since there died the last of a marvelous race, once inhabiting the very shores by which we are sailing. They were a very diminutive people, only a few inches high." "Stop, minstrel!" cried Mohi. "How many pennyweights did they weigh?" continued Yumi unheedingly. "They were covered all over with a soft silky down, like that on the rind of the Avi, and there grew upon their heads a green, lance-leaved vine of a most delicate texture. For convenience, the mannikins reduced their tendrils, sporting nothing but coronals. Whereas, priding themselves upon the redundancy of their tresses, the little maidens assiduously watered them with the early dew of the morning, so that all wreathed and festooned with verdure, they moved about in arbors, trailing after them trains. I can hear no more, exclaimed Mohi, stopping his ears. Continued Yumi. The damsel lured to their bowers certain red-plumaged insect birds, and taught them to nestle therein and warble, which, with the pleasant vibrating of the leaves, when the little maidens moved, produced a strange blend of sweet, singing sounds. The little maidens embraced not with their arms, but with their viny locks, whose tendrils instinctively twined about their lovers, till both were lost in the bower. And what then? Asked Mohi, who, notwithstanding the fingers in his ears, somehow contrived to listen. What then? Vouchsafing no reply, Yumi went on. At a certain age, but while yet the maidens were very young, their vines bore blossoms. Ah, fatal symptoms! For soon as they burst, the maidens died in their arbors, and were buried in the valleys, and their vines spread forth, and the flowers bloomed, but the maidens themselves were no more. And now disdaining the earth, the vines shot upward, climbing to the topmost boughs of the trees, and flowering in the sunshine for ever and aye. Yumi here paused for a space, but presently continued. The little eyes of the people of Tupia were very strange to behold, full of stars that shone from within like the Pleiades, deep-bosomed in blue. And like the stars, they were intolerant of sunlight, and slumbering through the day, the people of Tupia only went abroad by night. But it was chiefly when the moon was at full that they were mostly in spirits. Then the little mannikins would dive down into the sea, and rove about in the coral groves, making love to the mermaids, or, racing round, make a mad merry night of it with the sea urchins, plucking the reverend mullets by the beard, serenading the turtles in their cells, worrying the sea nettles, or tormenting with their antics the touchy torpedoes. Sometimes they went prying about with the starfish that have an eye at the end of each ray, and often with coral files in their hands stole upon slumbering swordfish, slyly blunting their weapons. In short, these stout little mannikins were passionately fond of the sea, and swore by wave and billow that sooner or later they would embark thereon in nautilus shells, and spend the rest of their roving days thousands of inches from Tupia. Too true, they were shameless little rakes. Oft would they return to their sweethearts, sporting musky girdles of sea kelp, tasseled with green little pouches of grass, brimful of seed pearls, and jingling their coin in the ears of the damsels, throw out innuendos about the beautiful and bountiful mermaids, how wealthy and amorous they were, and how they delighted in the company of the brave gallants of Tupia. Ah, at such heartless bravadoes, how mourned the poor little nymphs! Deep into their arbors they went, and their little hearts burst like rosebuds, and filled the whole air with an odorous grief. But when their lovers were gentle and true, no happier maidens haunted the lilies than they. By some mystical process they wrought minute balls of light, touchy mercurial globules, very hard to handle, and with these, at pitch and toss, they played in the groves, or mischievously inclined, they toiled all night long at braiding the moonbeams together, and entangling the plaited end to a bough, so that at night the poor planet had much ado to set. Here Yumi once more was mute. Pause you to invent as you go on, said old Mohi, elevating his chin till his head was horizontal. Yumi resumed. Little or nothing more, my masters, is extent of the legend, only it must be mentioned that these little people were very tasteful in their personal adornings, the mannikins wearing girdles of fragrant leaves and necklaces of aromatic seeds, and the little damsels not content with their vines and their verdure, sporting pearls in their ears, bracelets of wee little porpoise teeth, and oftentimes dancing with their mates in the moonlit glades, coquettishly fanning themselves with the transparent wings of the flying fish. Now I appeal to you, royal Media, to you, noble Taji, to you, Babbalanja, said the chronicler with an impressive gesture, whether this seems a credible history Yumi has invented. But perhaps he has entertained, old Mohi, said Babbalanja. He has not spoken the truth, persisted the chronicler. Mohi, said Babbalanja, truth is in things and not in words. Truth is voiceless, so at least saith old Bardiana. And I, Babbalanja, assert that what are vulgarly called fictions are as much realities as the gross mattock of Dididi, the digger of trenches. For things visible are but conceits of the eye, things imaginative, conceits of the fancy. If duped by one, we are equally duped by the other. Clear as this water, said Yumi. Opaque as this paddle, said Mohi. But come now, thou oracle, if all things are deceptive, tell us, what is truth? The old interrogatory. Did not they ask it when the world began? But ask it no more. As old Bardiana hath it, that question is more final than any answer. End of chapter 93.